A trade happened at some point in the past few hours. The Chiefs have sent receiver Ihmir Smith-Marsette to the Carolina Panthers. Ihmir Smith-Marsette almost made an appearance on yesterday's show as one of the preseason MVPs because I thought this is a guy who's playing well, shot out of a cannon for a long touchdown against the Browns. Had that on last night when we were down in the barn for the fantasy draft. Had all 4 TVs with pre-recorded preseason games. And some of the guys are like, hey, are they playing these now? It's like, no, there's nothing else on. There's no sports on tonight. Here you go. It's just for the ambiance. Preseason football. Enjoy it. But I saw Ihmir Smith-Marsette doing some great things. He had over 100 receiving yards in that game. So not enough space for him on the Chiefs roster. He gets traded to Panthers for a conditional 2025 7th-round pick. They exchanged conditional 2025 7th-round picks. I mean, that is the ham sandwich of NFL trades. But Marsette had 9 catches for 195 yards and 2 touchdowns in 3 preseason games. So I was intrigued by what I saw him do in the preseason, but I was concerned there wasn't going to be a spot for him in Kansas City. Now there might be a spot for him, Myles, in Carolina.
Well, this is kind of what we were talking about earlier at the top of the show, right? Where you have guys that may not fit on your 53-man roster or on your plans for the practice squad, but just show them off in a preseason game, and hey, look what happens. The Panthers come calling. They've got some injuries at receiver that they have been dealing with, so that's why you bring somebody in like this, maybe gives you a little bit of depth there on the back end of the roster at receiver, and so that gives you a little bit more flexibility. But yeah, I mean, when somebody shows off in the preseason like this and they get another opportunity, you're happy for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the Panthers trying to turn things around. They get a guy who, hey, instead of having to claim him on waivers and risk that chance that somebody else is going to take him, you get him, you don't give up much for him, and now you add him to your team and you see what can happen. And they do have some injured receivers between DJ Chark, Terrace Marshall, and Laviska Shenault, so they've got some need. And Smith-Marsette's a guy who he flashed in the preseason, and maybe he can make something happen. This one was surprising to me because he's been available for a while now and nobody had made the move. Former Colts cornerback and kick returner Isaiah Rodgers, who is out of the NFL for at least a full year, can reapply, I believe, in February. The Eagles have signed him. Now, obviously, he goes straight to the suspended list, but they have his rights, much like the Jaguars acquired via trade the rights to Calvin Ridley during his gambling-related suspension. Rodgers suspended for gambling. Eagles now have him under contract for whenever he's able to return. And he didn't have to agree to the contract. And I don't know what the rules are. I don't know what he's allowed to do by way of interaction with the Eagles while he's on this suspension. There's an argument to be made. Why not just wait? But you know what? If somebody wants to put you on a team and you feel like you're part of something, that connection may be the thing that helps you get through this suspension. You got something to look forward to. You know they're waiting for you. You stay in shape. You're ready to go. You get cleared, and you go join a pretty damn good football team.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good situation for Isaiah Rodgers. I mean, whenever you're talking about potentially joining one of the top teams in one of the 2 conferences, yeah, I think that does make a difference. But, I mean, Mike, is there any guarantee that he's going to be back next year? I mean, what he was accused of doing when it comes to sports betting is, like, very serious stuff, like beyond what Calvin Ridley was doing. So is there a possibility that he misses more than 1 season, do you think?
Well, potentially. This is all uncharted territory for the NFL, and they can ultimately do whatever they want to do. They have not banished him for life, but they could decide not to reinstate him after 1 year. It feels like, based on precedent, though, he'll be back after 1 year, assuming he doesn't have any further violations and he does whatever the NFL wants him to do. But for the Eagles, it's a flyer. It's simple, and they presumably have done their due diligence. And the good news for Isaiah Rodgers is it does give him something that he can point to on the calendar as he works his way through this suspension and hopes that he can get back to the league. And he's good enough to get back in. He's not a guy that you just say he's done with football and football is done with him. And I like the fact that there's some compassion out there for this guy who, the one thing the gambling policy doesn't take into account is you may have guys who show up in the NFL who have an addiction. And what are you doing to identify those guys and treat them? Are you just sitting back and waiting for them to violate the policy and then you're going to throw them out into the wilderness? Or are you going to try to intervene and help them when, At the college level, no one knew what they were doing. No one spotted what they were doing. No one tried to help the kid. Let's try to help these guys if they have an addiction. Let's help them cure it, and let's move forward instead of just sitting back and waiting for the opportunity to swoop in and pounce on somebody and then be able to say, see, we enforce our policies aggressively and even-handedly and without fear or favor or whatever other crap they want to say. Let's help these guys. Let's understand there may be some guys who have a problem, just like it was the attitude they used to have against marijuana and other drugs. Guys may have an issue. Instead of helping them, they're looking for ways to catch them and cast them out into the non-football world. All right, one more. You mentioned this earlier, and I know that you were very happy about this, even though a man has now lost his livelihood. Cade York out eventually in Cleveland after the trade that brings Dustin Hopkins from the L.A. Chargers to the Cleveland Browns. York was a fourth-round pick last year, missed 2 field goal attempts back, what was it, he missed 2 against the Eagles. He had 1 partially blocked. How many did he miss against the Chiefs? Was it just that one that was partially blocked that would have been the game winner?
He also missed an extra point that didn't count because of a running into the kicker penalty, and then the Browns went for 2. So it doesn't technically show up on the score sheet, but everybody saw it. Much like the one he missed against the Eagles from, they called it 47, but it should be 46, whatever it was. And then it ends up being 41. See here, this is the one he missed from 47. They had a penalty. They moved it up 5 yards and it somehow became a 41-yard field goal. Again, that math doesn't really math for me. And then he misses it again the other way as he overcorrects, right? So that's technically only 1 missed field goal, but we all watched 2. So this is why the Browns just could not trust him in this situation. And, you're like, oh, you're so happy. And, even though a man lost his livelihood, like I do have compassion for this guy. He's a young player. He's a young kicker.
It was a callback. I know. It was a callback to something we discussed last hour. I wasn't serious about it, Myles.
Well, I know, but I knew you were joking, but I am clarifying for the audience's sake here that I do have some empathy for someone who is just trying to do their job and is failing. And you can't really figure out why, because you're making your kicks in practice, but it is a results-based business, right? And when you're a kicker and you have one job, and that's to go out there and make your damn kicks, and you're not making the kicks, and the Browns need to be able to trust their kicker, it makes sense that they had to move on. So Dustin Hopkins, veteran guy, reliable, got hurt last year in the Monday Night Football game against the Denver Broncos at SoFi Stadium. So the reason that he doesn't have a job anymore is because Cameron Dicker came in and he was reliable. So it's not like Hopkins is unreliable. That's why the Browns made the trade. They have a new kicker and their kicking situation should be better.
The good kickers make the process look much easier than it really is. And I think it's incredibly easy to slip out of that sweet spot you need to be in to go out there and make your kicks. And look, the idea of kicking a field goal or an extra point, it's one thing to have a ball on a tee. You go down to your local high school field, you put the ball on the tee, you run up to it, and you kick it through the uprights from 35 yards, and you think you can be a kicker. I think that we undersell how hard it is when your target isn't there. When, as you start into your motion, your target isn't there. Your target appears and gets put there as you are in the process of striking your target. Very difficult to do. And then you have to hit it straight and true. And it's amazing how they make the ball. I mean, you can see it's like they almost control it where it goes. It starts one way and it comes back. It looks easier than it is, and it is very easy to not be a consistently good kicker. And now that wake-up call will allow Cade York to go somewhere else and become the next Daniel Carlson, where he's kicking 62-yarders, and he's one of the more consistent kickers in all of football, because there's nothing like that pink slip to wake a guy up, which may happen for Cade York. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.